Hello, welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42, talking about tonight's action on FanDuel, of course, and I'm talking about cash games, GPPs, of course, as well, and really no obvious slam dunk option at pitcher today. Most nights you see an ace on the mound. Today there's some really good pitchers, but no one that I consider just your obvious option behind the plate, on the mound, I should say. So as I'm looking at these guys, I'm looking at a couple guys from the St. Louis and LA Dodgers game. Carlos Martinez at the top, $9,100, been one of the more consistent pitchers in the game. Had two bad starts a couple weeks ago, but outside of that, 19, 15, 15 fantasy points his last three times with two wins. So 9,100, he's certainly in play, but he does get a tough Dodgers lineup, and he has had some struggles. Over a 330 WOBA allowed to left-handed batters this year. So you feel good about him, but you don't feel great. You got Tyson Ross against Cincinnati is $9,000. His walk rate's what really concerns me, 11.2%, and he hasn't had more than 12, or he's only had one game of more than 12 fantasy points in his last 9 starts. So really not a guy I'm paying $9,000 for. Reds don't strike out a ton. It's a bad ballpark for him. I think I'm looking at guys like Jake Odorizzi, $8,600, I think is a fine play at Seattle. Scott Kazmir is a guy I like, but I don't like his price tag, $8,600. That's the Boston team that's been really bad against lefties this year. But they do have some guys who do mash lefties. Napoli, Pedroia, I'll get to them here in a few minutes. If you're looking at cheap guys, I like Charlie Morton at 6.9K against Atlanta. 12 fantasy points each of his 2 starts, 7 innings pitched each of his 2 starts. He's not great against lefties, so that hurts him a little bit because obviously guys like Freddie Freeman, Nick Markakis in his lineup you worry about a little bit, but also not a high strikeout guy, but if he pitches 7 innings, gets you a quality start, more than going to pay off that tag at 6.9K. Brett Anderson's another guy, extreme ground ball pitcher. You're hoping for 10 to 13 fantasy points out of him. Not a bad play there at 6,700. Those are the only guys I'm really considering in cash. I don't feel great about any of them. Like I said, a couple guys you feel okay about. Other options, you've got Edison Volquez. He's 8.4. You don't love that, but he does have upside. No Adrian Beltre tonight. Also, no Josh Hamilton, of course. He's on the DL. Both guys on the DL. So that helps a little bit, but Volquez still one of those guys. He has those implosions every once in a while. I don't feel great about him. Other tournament options, Jose Quintana. The Detroit Tigers have a huge strikeout rate against lefties. They do hit the lefties really hard, though, so it's a give-or-take type of situation. He had 8 Ks in 5 innings against the same team on May 7th. Got 11 fantasy points in that one. 7,600. I think he's interesting. Aaron Sanchez against Houston, who, as we know, strikes out a ton. 6,800. He's interesting as well. Sayoshi Wada, $6,700 against a Washington team that has not been great. But Anthony Rendon back. He hits lefties really well. One more guy out there, Raisel Iglesias, was scratched from his last start. He has a minor injury. He's risky, certainly, but at 6,400, he's a good tournament option. We've seen his upside. Went 8 innings against Atlanta, had just 2 hits, 3 walks, 5 Ks, 16 fantasy points in that one. I think he's the best of the really, really cheap options. You could look at some other guys, but no one that really, really stands out to me. Kyle Loesch you can consider. He's had some terrible starts. He's had some really good starts, and we know that this is a team that strikes out a lot in Twins against right-handed pitching. So maybe shows his upside. Certainly not a cash game play. He's a tournament play only for me. As I move on to first base, I'm looking at whichever exposure I can get to cores here. Michael McHenry, Nick Hundley, JT Realmuto. Any of those 3 guys certainly in play for me. As I'm looking at other guys, Buster Posey, your top option if you're paying up at 3,700. Other options, I don't love a whole lot here. You're looking for cheap guys, of course, as you always are for your tournaments. And Jared Saltalamacchia at 2.3 Ks, been hitting the ball really well. I don't trust that he's going to continue to do that, but maybe if you want to ride the hot hands, or you can look at a guy like Sal Perez. He's men's salary. And most of that suited his line spot. He hasn't been hitting the ball great, but he does have a bunch of upside, ton of upside at 2.2K tonight. And then Wellington Castillo at men's salary, if he's in the lineup tonight, I like as well. First base, your top option for GPPs is going to be your most expensive one. Paul Goldschmidt against a lefty at home. John Neese is a fine lefty, but not a lefty that is going to be scaring me off of Paul Goldschmidt. And Paul Goldschmidt's just been incredible. He's got 7 walks in his last 3 games, 11 in his last 5, including also 4 home runs. I mean, the guy's just one of the best hitters in the game. Doesn't get any credit. Batting .370 at home this year. Gotta love him. Adrian Gonzalez, a nice tournament play at 4K as well. If you're looking for cash game options, Freddie Freeman 3.9 is interesting. Joey Votto 39, but I love Lucas Duda 3.8K against Jeremy Hellickson, the Hell Dog. I wanted to get some exposure yesterday. Obviously, had his start bump back. Jose Abreu at 3.7 is another guy I'll be looking at quite a bit. Tournament guys, Ben Paulson at 3.3, Eric Hosmer at 3.5, and then Justin Bohr 3.1K is really interesting play there as well. Moving on to second base. Some options to look at. Brandon Phillips, 3.3K. I really like against Tyson Ross in tournaments. You don't love the price tag. He's getting up there. Other guys, obviously, right around that price that you love in cash. Dustin Pedroia against Scott Kazmir. He's crushing left. He's really starting to get it going right now. And then another guy, Ben Zobrist at $3,000, you got to like. And then right below him, Logan Forsythe continues to hit lefties really well. $3,000. Got to like that option. As you're looking for cheaper options, there's not a whole lot that I love. If Jeff Baker's in the lineup, I don't mind him. But usually in the lineup against lefties, not against righties. We'll see, but he's a nice cheap option there. If he is, Hanser Alberto, same thing. 2.6K, pretty cheap for him as well. And if you look all the way down to the bottom, there's really nothing that you're looking at. Aaron Hill, if he's in the lineup, 2.2K, is the guy that I'll be looking at a little bit tonight as well. Third base, Nolan Arenado, of course, at home. Coors Field, 11-run total. There are a lot of weather concerns in Colorado, so monitor this once again. Hopefully we don't have a situation like we have a bunch of times this year, but it seems like it's heading that way where you don't know if you want to risk them in cash, but there's certainly great plays in tournaments, so could be heading that direction again tonight. Joey Gallo, 3.4, certainly going to be a guy people look at, but I love Evan Longoria at 3.1. Jay Happ's been a fine pitcher this year, but Longo, one of the best in the game against lefties. I love him. Yasmani Tomas at 3K, certainly another guy you can look at. And Luis Valbuena, he's in the Rogers Center today against a righty. All the guy does is hit home runs and strike out. I mean, he's got 12 home runs on the season, and he doesn't walk light, doesn't get a whole lot of hits, but I'm looking his way. And Ruben Tejada, 2.8K. The guy is on fire. You look at his recent logs, I mean, positive points in all of his last 9 games, including 5 multi-hit games in his last 7. The guy doesn't have a ton of power, only 1 home run in the season, but the guy's hitting the ball well. Gets the awful Jeremy Hellickson today. You know I'm looking that way at him. And then as you look at some other options, Mike Moustakas is another guy, 2.6. It's interesting as a cash game play. Cheaper guys, not a whole lot to love down low for me. Pablo Sandoval, still min salary. Just not a guy that is hitting the ball at all right now. I mean, I guess you can go that way. Got to think he regresses or comes towards the mean a little bit, but just not a guy I feel comfortable with tonight. Shortstop options, Troy Tulowitzki's your top option, of course, at home. Johnny Peralta, always your good cash game option at 3.6K. Your other options, you're looking a little bit cheaper, of course. Chris Owings, if he's in the lineup, you don't mind him at 2.7K. I don't love him, though. Wilmer Flores at Arizona. I was looking for him last night when Hellickson was supposed to pitch. 2.4, he's got a lot of power. Got to love that ballpark situation for him tonight. As far as really cheap options go, I'm going to be looking for lineups to see if I can find some value. No one who really jumps off the page outside is Jake Elmore. Gets a lefty again. Should be batting 6th. I like Jake Elmore tonight at that price. Outfield, get Giancarlo Stanton and then worry about the rest of your lineup. I'm getting a ton of Giancarlo Stanton. I think you need to have him tonight in this situation in Coors Field against a bad pitcher. 11-run total. He's the top option in that game if you ask me. Sure, many people will not disagree. I love A.J. Pollock as a contrarian play, 4.7. Nobody's ever talking about him. The guy's just phenomenal right now, hitting the ball, stealing bases. He's doing it all, batting right ahead of Paul Goldschmidt. Jock Peterson at 4.3 is going to be a popular play as he is often recently. He's up to 17 home runs in the season. Got to look his way. All the rest of these Miami, Colorado outfielders in play. We're not going to highlight individual ones. You know how this Coors Field goes. A couple guys at 3.7K. Brandon Moss against Chris Tillman. Steven Souza against J.A. Happ. Both those guys in play for me as well. As I'm looking down the list a little bit, Delino DeShields, $3,300. He's expensive, but he's been stealing bases and getting on. Certainly considering him tonight at that price. Jay Bruce at 3.1 is an interesting play there as well. And I love Joey Butler at $3,000. I think he's a great play there. Against the lefty, should be batting 2nd tonight. Then you got some really cheap guys that you're not used to being cheap. You got Alex Gordon at 2.9K as a really interesting play. And Lorenzo Cain, 2.8. Homered last night, can steal bases. Guy can do it all. Always underappreciated. And then one of my favorite plays of the night, Michael Kadire, 2.7K. His teammate, Curtis Granderson. You notice in the Mets trend here, he's the same price. I'm looking his way as well. And as far as really cheap options go, if Rusney Castillo gets a nice lineup spot, you like him at 2.5K. Nick Markakis, the lefty, against Charlie Morton, of course. And then as far as really cheap options, Will Venable, if he's leading off, 2.4K is a nice value play there. And all the way down at the bottom of the list here, you've got a couple guys that you can consider. Nobody that you really love. I mean, Melky Cabrera, 2.2, still really isn't hitting the ball well, but you can certainly consider him because he is bare minimum salary. Matt Kemp now, bare minimum 2.2. We all know he's a much better hitter than that. I think I'd rather go with him in that spot. And with that, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DFCafe. And check out all of our great content for tonight's slate and every other slate, dailyfantasycafe.com. And subscribe to this YouTube channel. And we'll see you guys next time.